Hello, welcome back to our coverage from AWS reInvent 2018. This is the Amazon Web Services Global User Education Conference. We're bringing you all of the excitement from the show here in Las Vegas this week. My name is Ian, I'm with the AWS Developer Evangelism team, and I am joined by...
I'm Abby Fuller. I'm Nikki.
I'm Gabe.
Awesome, and we're going to just quickly recap some of the highlights from this morning's keynote. So it's the third day of reInvent here in Las Vegas. This morning, Amazon Web Services Chief Executive Andy Jassy was on stage for, I think, a little over 2.5 hours, talking through a few new AWS services, as is the tradition here. So, Abby, what were you most excited about from this morning's keynote? What were the highlights for you?
Well, other than obviously the in-house cover band, which is I think everyone's top highlight, probably FSX for Lustre. So basically a fully managed file system just for compute-intensive workloads. So something that for some really special use cases people have been asking for a while.
Cool. What about you, Nikki?
I just want to get my hands on a deep racer. Let's be honest, like, if I could go down to the track right now, I'd be like first in line.
Why don't you explain a little bit more about what that is for the audience?
Yeah, so the AWS Deep Racer was the fully autonomous scale race car that's powered by deep learning that Andy Jassy announced. It's currently on pre-order now on Amazon.com. I think it's available now for $249 at a limited time. Looks super cool. It basically help you learn deep learning through training your race car on a track.
Awesome. Gabe, what about you? What was your highlight from this morning's keynote?
Well, I also was excited about Deep Racer, but another thing I think is really great is the new DynamoDB read-write capacity on demand feature. So it used to be that if you were using Amazon's DynamoDB, which is our NoSQL key value store, you would have to preemptively provision, and you could use auto-scaling for it, but you'd have to decide ahead of time how much read and write workload you were expecting to have at any given time. Now, you've got a truly serverless offering there where it can be managed for you. So I think that's great. That's going to be much simpler for a lot of people in terms of running their DynamoDB workloads.
Totally.
Awesome. We also added a couple of new features, a couple of completely new services actually.
So
again, I was going to say, the database management space with these new database offerings that we announced this morning. So we announced something called Amazon TimeStream, which is a serverless time series database for ingesting machine data into. I think that'll be pretty popular with customers that are building connected device apps. And then secondly, this quantum ledger database, this blockchain immutable ledger database that we announced as well. I think that's a really interesting way to allow customers to use blockchain technology without a lot of the complexity that's associated with running that kind of application infrastructure. So I thought that was pretty cool as well.
I agree. Couldn't agree more on that one. I also like the launch of Amazon Managed Blockchain for people that want to manage their workloads on Ethereum or Hyperledger Fabric.
Ian is a minor blockchain celebrity.
Oh, really?
Untrue, completely untrue.
Should we also talk about deep learning?
Yeah, what about machine learning services? Because we only really touched on that with Deep Racer. What about some of the other services that we announced in machine learning?
Yeah, there's a lot. You mentioned Textract. Do you want to take that one?
Textract. So now you can basically extract text from documents. So it'll identify tables, forms, in data, and then you can use that data now to do anything. Machine learning, insights, analytics. I'm really excited about Textract, and I'm actually talking about it later today at 3:20.
Cool, so stay tuned for that. I'm just getting started in my machine learning and deep learning journey, and so I've been using SageMaker to great effect. It's a really impressive service that we have that'll let you get started building deep learning models even without having to design the algorithms yourself. There's a ton that are built in. We announced in the keynote the AWS Marketplace for machine learning. So if there's not already a built-in algorithm for you in SageMaker for the problem you're trying to solve, there might be now in a broader marketplace. And this is great both for people who are just looking to apply deep learning to their problem domains, but also for the builders of those models and algorithms, because now they can monetize and release those with the world. So I think that's really nice.
I agree. What about ground truth?
Ground truth, yeah. So of course, when you're building some models, it's helpful to be able to label your data, and that can be really time consuming. So now we have a service called SageMaker Ground Truth, which reduces the cost of building those labeled data sets It's neat because it'll do automatic retraining and relearning of the model. So your data comes in, humans of your choice, whether it's a Mechanical Turk group of individuals or completely private inside your organization, can go ahead and label your data. That labeled data then feeds into a model that new data comes into, and if the model is really certain about that new data, it doesn't need to get relabeled, and it'll just go straight through, and you can choose what that threshold is, and so that model's continually improving with the human-powered training that's happening. Really impressive.
Very impressive, I agree.
I like the new abstracted services that we announced. So we announced a couple of new services to make it simpler for customers to work with machine learning in very common use cases like recommendations or personalization engines. And then another new service called Amazon Forecast, which is a time series forecasting service using deep learning where you can submit a set of data points that are historical data for your particular use case, and then project forward from there and make predictions about where that sequence is going to head in the future. It might be useful in things like stock management in the supply chain context, where you want to know how many of widget A to order for sales in the future. That's a new service, Amazon Forecast, that we announced as well.
Both of those teams are going to be live with me later this afternoon. Personalize and Forecast if you'd like to hear more.
Yeah, maybe we should talk a little bit about the program for the rest of the day. So if you stick with us here on twitch.tv/AWS, we're going to be bringing you deep dives on a lot of the services that were announced during this morning's keynote. So you'll get 20-minute segments diving into a lot more detail about the announcements that were made during this morning's launch keynote. And that'll be interspersed with some roaming excitement from various locations around the expo here, and also some of the other sites here at AWS reInvent. So up this afternoon, we'll have live coverage from the Deep Racer Challenge racetrack over in the MGM. And we'll also have some interviews with some principal engineers and more senior engineers from the AWS team that have worked on some of the services that have been launched at reInvent as well. So stick with us for the rest of the program today.
I think worth pointing out too that if you're following along with the reInvent sessions from home, or if you're at the actual event, for things that were just announced in the keynote, sessions are posted this morning. So if it was something that they just announced live on stage this morning, check back in the session catalog, and the new session titles and times should be going up that you can snag a seat in.
Maybe with just the last little bit of time here in our segment, it would be nice to just recap some statistics. So this is our 7th reInvent, and I was wondering how big it would be. You know, last year we had a pretty large number. It's not an official count yet, but Andy mentioned probably 53,000-ish people here right now, and we had over 100,000 also tuned in on the live stream, including probably a lot of you, so thank you for tuning into that. And we have over 2,100 sessions going on during this whole reInvent program, so it's a huge amount of content to help builders learn and stay up to date with the latest best practices and exciting new releases that we have here at AWS.
You can catch up with all of those sessions from AWS reInvent on the Amazon Web Services YouTube channel. So typically 24 hours or less after a session's taken place here, one of the breakouts, you can find it on Amazon Web Services on YouTube, and check out all of the deep dive content from the show here in Las Vegas.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you soon.
See ya.